Hello, I'm Anna, and I'm 34. I wish I could say my Emile was just a typical overbearing mother-in-law. But no, she was a full-on nightmare from the day I met her. My husband, Matt, and I have been together for 4 years, married for 2. But according to my Emile, I was the worst thing that ever happened to him. Why? Because I wasn't his ex-wife, Jessica. I never met Jessica personally, but from what Matt told me, their marriage was a train wreck. Jessica was self-absorbed, manipulative, and completely reckless with money. She cheated on him multiple times, but somehow always made him feel like it was his fault for not keeping her interested. Despite all this, Emile adored her. She saw Jessica as this perfect, classy woman and refused to acknowledge the damage she caused. So when Matt finally divorced her, Emile lost it. She begged him to reconsider, told him that marriage is about forgiveness, not giving up. When he didn't listen, she did the next best thing. She blamed me. Even though I met Matt a year after his divorce, Emile was convinced I had somehow seduced him away from his true soulmate, and she never let me forget it. From the very first time I met her, she looked me up and down and sniffed like I smelled bad. "You're not what I expected," she said, fake smiling. Matt, being the peacekeeper, tried to smooth things over. But every time we saw her, it was the same thing. Passive-aggressive jabs, backhanded compliments, and always bringing up Jessica. Oh, Jessica used to make the best pasta from scratch. But I'm sure you do your best, dear. Matt always loved the way Jessica decorated the house. I don't know why you changed it. Jessica was so stylish. She really had a way of making people look at her. Jessica had a way of making people look at her because she was cheating with half the city. But whatever. I gritted my teeth, smiled, and endured it. I did it for Matt. He loved his mom, and I didn't want to be the reason they stopped talking. But then, things escalated. One day, Matt and I were having dinner at her house. She was in an especially bad mood, snapping at Matt for the dumbest reasons. Finally, she put down her fork, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "I don't understand what my son sees in you." Jessica was stunning. "You're plain." Matt froze. My jaw dropped. I was about to say something, but Matt beat me to it. He stood up, threw his napkin on the table, and said, "If you're going to talk to my wife like that, we're leaving." And Emile gasped, like she was a victim. "Matt, don't be ridiculous. I'm just being honest." But he was already grabbing our coats. "We're done, Mom." And just like that, we left. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be the wake-up call she needed, that she'd realize how cruel she was being. But no. Instead, she doubled down. The next day, Matt got a text from his mom. It was short and brutal. "Since you've chosen her over your real family, you are no longer my son. Don't contact me again." We were stunned. What kind of mother just disowns her son over something so petty? Matt tried calling her. She ignored him. He sent a long text, pouring his heart out, saying he loved her but wouldn't tolerate her disrespecting me. She left him on read. And then, she did something that completely blindsided us. She invited Jessica to move in with her. Like what? Apparently, Jessica had hit a rough patch. Her latest relationship had crashed and burned, and she needed a place to stay. And Emile? She welcomed her with open arms. She literally posted on Facebook about how she was rebuilding her family with the daughter-in-law she always wanted. Matt saw the post and just laughed. If she thinks this is going to make me regret anything, she's delusional. And he was right. For the next year, Emile pretended we didn't exist. She never reached out, never apologized. And honestly, we were fine. We built a happy life without her. But then, we got a phone call that changed everything. It was Emile's sister, and she had some shocking news. Emile was dying. She had been diagnosed with cancer a few months ago, and she never told Matt. Her sister thought he should know. "You should go see her," she said, "before it's too late." Matt sat there in silence for a long time. Finally, he looked at me and said, "I don't know if I want to." And honestly, I didn't blame him. After everything she put him through, after choosing Jessica over her own son, now she suddenly wanted him back in her life. But despite everything, I knew Matt. He had a good heart. So I said, "If you need closure, go. If not, you don't owe her anything." He nodded, and the next day, he made his decision. But when he got to the hospital, he found out something that shook him to his core. His mother refused to see him. She had left strict orders that he wasn't allowed in her room. And that's not even the worst part, because a few weeks later, when she finally passed, we found out something even more unbelievable. And trust me, you're not ready for what she did next. Matt stood in the hospital hallway, gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. "She won't see me," he said, his voice flat. I blinked. "What?" He let out a sharp laugh, completely devoid of humor. "She told the hospital staff I'm not allowed in her room, that I'm no longer her son." I was speechless. Even now, at the very end, she was holding on to her hatred. I felt a rush of anger. "Matt, we should just go." She made her choice, but he didn't move. He just stood there, staring at the floor. Finally, he whispered, "I just wanted to say goodbye." And that broke me, because despite everything, he still loved her, and she didn't deserve it. But before I could say anything else, a voice interrupted us. "Matt!" We turned, and there, standing in the hallway like she belonged, was Jessica. She was holding a hospital visitor badge, meaning Emile had let her in, but not her own son. Matt's entire body went rigid. Jessica, of course, looked completely unbothered. In fact, she smirked. "Wow," she said, looking him up and down. "It's been a while." Matt didn't respond. She tilted her head. "Are you waiting to see her?" She said it like she already knew the answer. And then she sighed dramatically. "Oh, Matt, you really should have apologized sooner. She would have forgiven you." I saw red. "Apologize?" I snapped. "For what? Existing?" Jessica shrugged. "For breaking her heart." I almost laughed at how absurd that was. But Matt just exhaled sharply. Then he said, "You know what, Jessica? You two deserve each other." And with that, he turned around and walked out. He never looked back. And I followed him, because at that moment, he was done. For real this time. Emile passed away a few weeks later. We didn't attend the funeral, but we got plenty of messages from Matt's relatives. Most of them were angry, calling him disrespectful for not showing up, saying family is family and he should have forgiven her. But where were they when she disowned him? Where were they when she called me ugly and replaced me with Jessica? Exactly. So we ignored them. We thought we could finally move on. But then, we got a letter from Emile's lawyer. Matt hesitated before opening it. Then, as his eyes scanned the paper, his face went blank. She left everything to Jessica. I froze. What? Her house, her money, everything. Jessica gets it all. I felt my stomach drop. But she had other kids, grandkids, and you. He let out a bitter laugh. Nope, not a single cent. I was stunned. This woman, his own mother, had gone out of her way to erase him completely. But before I could even react, Matt said, "Honestly, I don't care." And for the first time, I believed him, because this wasn't a surprise. Emile had spent years making it clear he meant nothing to her. This was just her final insult. But the funny thing about karma, it always finds a way. And trust me, Jessica's victory didn't last long, because a few months later, she made one huge mistake, and it came back to bite her. Hard. Jessica thought she won. She flaunted it all over social media, starting a new chapter in the house of someone who truly loved me. She was living in Emile's house, redecorating it to look like a real housewives' mansion and acting like she had earned it. Matt didn't say a word. He just deleted his Facebook. "I'm done looking at her bullshit," he told me. And honestly, I was proud of him. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't angry. He just moved on. But karma was just getting started, because a few months later, Jessica made a huge mistake, and it destroyed everything. It started with a phone call from Matt's aunt. "You're not going to believe this," she said, barely containing her glee. Apparently, Jessica was being sued. "Wait, what?" I blinked. "Yeah," his aunt said. "And Miles' house? She doesn't actually own it." Matt sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" Turns out, Emile had been behind on her property taxes for years. She was barely keeping up with payments before she passed. Jessica, being Jessica, thought she was rich now. She spent thousands redecorating the place, buying designer clothes, taking vacations, instead of paying off the house. And now, the city was seizing the property. Jessica was being evicted, and she had nowhere to go. Matt stared at me for a second. Then, he burst out laughing. "Are you serious?" His aunt laughed too. As a heart attack, I couldn't stop grinning. This woman had spent years trying to destroy Matt's life. And now, she was homeless. Karma is a beautiful thing. But the best part, Jessica didn't just lose the house. She lost everything. Because, turns out, she was also drowning in debt. Emile had left her money, yes, but not enough to support Jessica's insane lifestyle. She had maxed out multiple credit cards, took out loans she couldn't afford, and now the banks were coming for her too. Matt and I just sat back and watched. It was like a live-action reality show. Jessica, who thought she was too good for everyone, now had nothing. And the funniest part, she actually had the nerve to call Matt. It was a Tuesday night when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. "Jessica." He let it ring. Then, a text popped up. "Matt, can we talk?" We just stared at it. Matt snorted. "Absolutely not." Then, he blocked her number. No second chances. No closure. Just done. And honestly, it felt perfect. But Jessica, she wasn't finished yet. Because a few weeks later, she showed up at our house. And that's when things got really insane. Matt and I had just finished dinner when we heard a knock at the door. It was late. We weren't expecting anyone. Matt glanced at me, then went to check the peephole. The moment he looked, his entire body went rigid. I already knew. "Tell me it's not." "It's Jessica." I groaned. "Seriously?" Matt sighed. "Yup, and she looks rough." Rough was an understatement. I peeked through the window. Jessica was standing on our porch in cheap leggings and an old hoodie, her hair a mess, mascara smeared down her face. She looked like she had been crying for hours. And then, she started knocking harder. "Matt, I know you're in there." Matt closed his eyes for a second, like he was mentally preparing himself. Then, he opened the door, but he didn't let her inside. "Jessica," he said flatly. Her lip trembled. "Matt, please. Just hear me out." Matt crossed his arms. "You've got 5 minutes." She swallowed hard. Then, she launched into full sob story mode. "I lost everything, Matt. The house. My savings. I made a mistake, okay? I was blinded by what I thought I deserved. But I see it now. I messed up. I should have never treated you the way I did." Matt just stared at her. No reaction. So she kept going. "I have nowhere to go. No money. I was wrong about everything. I should have been with you this whole time. Please, Matt. I just need your help. Just for a little while." Silence. Then, Matt did something that shocked even me. He laughed. A low, humorless laugh. "You really think I'm going to save you now?" Jessica's face crumbled. "But you made my life hell," he said. "You let my mother disown me. You took everything she had to offer and still wanted more. And now that you've burned through all of it, you expect me to clean up your mess? Jessica was full on crying now. But I loved you. No, Matt said, cutting her off. You loved using me. Big difference. She shook her head, desperate. I have no one else, Matt. Matt didn't care. You had me once, he said. You threw me away. Now you can deal with the consequences. Jessica sobbed. But where am I supposed to go? Matt shrugged. Not my problem. Then he closed the door in her face. Just like that. And we never saw her again. Jessica disappeared. Last we heard, she moved in with a random guy she met online. Probably her next victim. Matt never looked back. For the first time in years, he was free. Free from his mother's toxicity. Free from Jessica's manipulations. And us, we were happier than ever. No more drama. No more chaos. Just peace. And honestly, that was the best revenge of all.